Okay, today is the second half of relationships lecture. It's really my favorite part. This is my favorite theory of all theories. I know I say that all the time, but this is it, attachment theory. And it's basically the attachment or bonding patterns that we make with other people. We get into a pattern of this, and it kind of follows us around throughout our life. Now, if you remember the mother-child bond, the whole idea behind this is your first relationship attachment. And the quality of that attachment will give you certain assumptions about how your future attachments will go. And so it'll set you up in a certain pattern. Remember the monkeys? Right? It set them up in kind of a bad pattern based on the break of this mother-child bond. Now, Sigmund Freud, if you remember me talking about cupboard theory, he argued it was physical nourishment. I'm arguing it's the love cupboard, and this is what I call this lecture. Oh, girl, he too thirsty. This guy. Why am I too thirsty? Because the nature of my mother-child bond wasn't really affectionate, and so I got really cravey or lovey-doveyness, and so that followed me into my adult bonds and started to, cause problems. Okay, I hope I made sense right there. Okay, here we go. Mary Ainsworth in 1978 then had this thing called the strange situation paradigm. She knew about the monkey. She worked with this guy named John Bowlby, who did a lot of research on orphans. And so they knew about this being broken, kind of like with the monkeys. But she would bring moms and their little babies in, and she discovered three attachment styles. I'll get to them much later, but here we go. Okay, so the strange situation paradigm is kind of like a living room. So they bring the mother and the child in like this, and the child's 18 months old, and the child can play and hang out with the mom, and then she's over there making notes. You can see through a two-way mirror just to observe the two. And then they bring a stranger in. That's the name of the strange situation paradigm. How do you deal with strangers? And then the stranger is left in there and mom sneaks out. Are you okay alone with a stranger? Mom comes back. What about the reunion? You don't have to remember any of this. Now, while you're not looking, both of them kind of sneak out. Are you okay alone? And then they both come back in. So, based on all these different combinations, I'm going to argue this is what she's measuring. First thing, stranger anxiety. Do you freak out on strangers? Well, you should have a little stranger danger, but if you're super paranoid and can't be around a stranger, right, there's a lot of variation in that. And so I think a lot of kids have problems with stranger anxiety. I mean, social anxiety, right? Other thing is separation anxiety. You're talking to him right here, and we'll get into this in more detail later. It's like, oh my God, don't leave me now. How did your first day of school go? Because mine didn't go good. I had to go down to the principal's office, and he convinced me that my mother would come and pick me up. And for all day long, I was like, no, she's not. He's like, yes, she is, Tim. And finally, she really did come and pick me up. Okay, I equate all this to dogs. I think that dogs also have these two problems because some dogs get a lot of stranger anxiety where they get real vicious or crazy with strangers, and other dogs, like, you can't leave them alone, like my dog. It's like Tiny Dog on The Secret Life of Pets. I should have brought that in right here. Okay, so anyway, to wrap all this up before we move on to adults, the mother-child bond either can get way too clingy. Don't write this down. These aren't the three styles. Way too avoidant, where you're afraid of strangers, or just right in the middle. One time I was lecturing on this, I'd look out into the crowd, like, oh my God, I see a mother crying because I'm talking about the cupboard. It's like, oh my God, she's probably thinking about how she fucked her kids up, and this, that, and the other. It's like, oh shit. And then that got me to thinking, and it was a good thing. Not all of it's the cupboard. You see, if I think about a litter of puppies, that some of those puppies might be real shy and some are really, really rowdy and they were born that way. And then the interaction between different types of cupboards or mothers and different kinds of puppies brings out neediness versus independence versus all these things we've been talking about. Okay, so based on that strange situation paradigm, she comes up with these three different styles. I think she really has a fourth one, but I want you to focus on these three. Secure. I'm just going to argue you don't have to study that for the test. The bond between you and your mother was good. You're going to have good relationships in the future. They're not going to be perfect, but you're going to have a basic trusting attitude. Things are going to be good for you. Okay, the bad news. These two are not secure by definition. One way you can be not secure is to get clingy. And one way you can be not secure is to be standoffish and just like my brother, FTW, fuck the world. You know what I mean? So I'm going to go through these three styles on the next few slides and talk about the implications they have for the adult relationships you start to form. Okay, so Hazan and Shaver. Now we're moving to adults. This is a famous study. Please don't write any of this down. It's probably hard to see anyway. They published a love quiz in Colorado newspapers, I think in the 80s, and it's a famous study, but basically they used descriptions of the three styles. People don't know that these titles aren't on there. They just read these paragraphs. Oops, let me get this erased. And say which one describes me. The first one describes secure, and 56% of the people picked that. I won't ask you that on the test. The good news is more than half of the people are secure. The bad news is 44% of the people are not secure. Okay, so I find it relatively easy to get close to others. They can depend upon me. I don't worry about being abandoned or someone getting too close to me. I know I just wrote all over that. Okay, so that's what it should be, the ideal. Anxious, ambivalent. Here I am right here. Oh, girl, he too thirsty. I find others won't get as close as I want to. And sometimes I think my girlfriend doesn't really love me and she might leave me. And the more I try to get close to her, the more she wants to run away. 20% of the people pick that, basically. And then the last one is like, fuck other people. I find them difficult to trust. You can't depend upon them. I tell you who can depend upon this guy right here, just me. You know what I mean? And so I can get a little avoidant at times. And so you were supposed to pick one of these three and say which one is your style. I'm not going to out you, but I've already outed myself because I struggle with this one right here. Okay, so let's go to the three styles. What did Hazan and Shaver do? They called some of these people back up and said, okay, you picked this particular paragraph. We want to come in and interview you. So when they brought the secure people in to interview them, they said this: I feel good about me, the world's a good place, and generally other people are good people. This reminds me of Jean-Paul Sartre. When they ask him the definition of hell, he says, I'll tell it to you right now. Hell is other people. So this is the opposite of Jean-Paul Sartre. I want to be this, and a lot of times I can be this, but most of the time that's not my style. Okay, so that's why I'm arguing. If you have that style, things are going to be good for you. End of the story. You don't have to study anymore. I tend to be anxious ambivalent. What does that mean? It's like, I kind of doubt myself and I feel misunderstood. And it's like, oh my God, people are going to leave me. They're going to find out who I am, almost like I'm an imposter. And then, like, because I'm doubting myself, I don't know if y'all remember Elmira from the Animaniacs. It's like, oh my God, she squeezed the animal so hard, all I do want is run away. When you're real thirsty, it chases people away. Now, this first part, if I'm in class, I usually talk about this one, being misunderstood and feeling doubt about myself. I don't know if now I'm too old, but this is one of my favorite songs of all time. It's Creep by Radiohead. As soon as I start, it's like, I wish I was special. I wish I floated like a feather. It's you, not me. And so that plays into my anxious ambivalence. I have a few more things about this. People who do not love themselves, Andrew Matthews says, can adore others because that's making someone else big and ourselves small. They can desire others because that comes out of a sense of incompleteness. But you can't love another person because you have to have it to give it. Wow. I don't want to look at that too long. Okay. So here's my Cat Williams story. I don't know if you like Cat Williams. I love him, but I won't get too inappropriate. But here it goes. One of his girlfriends was leaving him in one of his stand-up routines. He says that she said to him, Cat, you've ruined my self-esteem. And he says, bitch, it's called self-esteem. Has the word self on there. It doesn't have the word other esteem or cat esteem or anything else esteem on it. It has self-esteem. It's how you feel about yourself. So I can't alter that. And so in a way, that's not completely true, but it's for me. It's for this guy right here who is the bitch. It's like I need to understand that it's not other esteem. It just isn't. And so this is a quote I get from Coda. I don't know if you know Codependence Anonymous. I accept myself. I don't want to start crying already. I no longer wait for others to define me or give me permission to be who I am. I no longer need to audition for others, hoping they'll see my worth. That ain't fucking love. And so this is the thing that helps me stand into my power, and I hope this thing right here helps you too. Okay, the third style, avoidant. Avoidant is just like it sounds. Almost don't need to study it for the test. It's like, get away from me. I don't like people. You can't trust them. People are dicks. It's like this basic mistrust of the world. So what am I going to do? I'm going to build the wall. I'm going to build a wall so that nobody can get behind here and hurt me. Speaking of which, I love the wall. Do you love the wall? I love the wall. Okay. Is there anybody out there? Does anybody here remember Vera Lynn? Hey, you, all these different things, are anxious ambivalence turning into avoidance, which is fuck everybody. That's what the wall is. Okay. I hope I did a good job of describing the three. Okay, if we were in class right now, what I usually do is ask people, do you think you can move between the three? It's like, let's hope so, because if I'm stuck here, I'm fucked. You know what I mean? But I tend to be real needy, kind of. Sometimes I can get avoidant, just depends. When I get hurt, it's like, fuck everybody, I'm not going to let anybody in here. But it's hard for me to be secure. Now, to illustrate my point, I'm going to bring up this very important movie. It's called Daddy's Home. And in Daddy's Home, Will Ferrell is so anxious and ambivalent, especially with not only the wife, but the kids. He just wants their love so much. He's so thirsty. And Mark Wahlberg is like avoidant, the standoffish. Neither one of them are secure. It's really the lady that's caught in betwixt. Okay, so this is where I go, coupledom. I mean, I've had a lot of girlfriends and wives before, but when I get into coupledom, it's like I got to watch my fucking cupboard. You get two secure people together, great, because they allow each other a lot of room. You can go on vacation with your girlfriends, go on, do your thing with your guys, whatever. You know what I mean? It's called this thing right here. It's called trust. If you don't have that, you might not have a relationship. And listen to this, Tim. Okay. The secure sometimes might hook up with an anxious ambivalent. I've been in this relationship a lot where a girl tries to save me or vice versa. And I'm real needy. And at first she goes, I love you, Tim. I'm not going to leave. Oh, tell me again. Tell me again. Tell me again. And then I become like this little vampire and she leaves. Speaking of which, have you seen this movie? Forgetting Sarah Marshall. There's a fucking vampire on the movie, and he plays it, and it's all about his anxious ambivalence and how she's fucked him over because she's kind of avoidant, and how he has to come to terms to try to become secure with Mila Kunis. Okay, now sometimes you might get this combination. I don't know why these two people would hang out. It's like a real needy person with someone that doesn't want to be around somebody. But I see relationships like this all the time where the husband's all closed off and the wife's like, wanting his attention or vice versa. So wouldn't it be better to have two needy or two standoffish people together? But if you get two needy people together, that's just like having one person. It's like a cocoon. They're just all about each other. Okay, so to wrap this up, if you think about on this end, what I've been talking is you can get on one end if a thing is too clingy, where you get too close together. Like if you plant two trees real close together, they're going to choke each other out. They don't have any breathing room. On the other end, you can get too avoidant, where the trees are so far apart, you don't have a fucking relationship. But right in the middle is called secure, where you have a healthy distance to allow each other to breathe, but also you have plenty of overlap. Okay, I hope you like that section. Only two more sections to go. This next section is on marriage. And so when I talk about marriage, I prefer the term partnership because it's more modern, I think. Marriage connotes kind of woman and man because I'm all for gay marriage. But I think partners also connotes an equality between the two people. So when I talk about marriage, I think I have two or three things I want to mention about it. Intimacy is one of the things, especially if you look at straight couples. And I don't know if you remember when we talk about how we form friendships and intimacy in friendships that guys tend to have to be doing an activity, whereas girls do it through talk and self-disclosure. Well, that carries kind of over into relationships because when they ask guys and girls what intimacy means, I love this. For women, it's like talk and self-disclosure and getting to know each other. I mean, some of it could be sex, but for guys, it is sex. It's like that's what intimacy is. It's like, well, not always. Okay, and so we'll talk about this a little bit later in a few slides. Okay, another thing, if you remember the triangle theory, if you think about this intimacy thing, getting to know each other, if you're in a relationship, I hope you know each other. There's 3 different relationships that had intimacy in it that could be a possibility. Romantic love is like lovers. Might not be suited for the long, run, Romeo and Juliet, but you're passionately, and torridly in love with each other and know each other. Companionate, that's friends, but we talked about the arranged marriages, right? And then this right here is to me, mates, your soulmates, or whatever you want to call it. You get the whole enchilada. Okay, so that's how intimacy kind of comes into play right there. Now, another thing they look at in relationships, there's a power struggle a lot of times. I don't like this game, you know what I mean? I like equality, but there are a lot of times the power struggle. Many couples acknowledge this is true. I wish I had the reference right here, but I can go back and get the literature later. And a lot of times that power struggle is kind of off-put. If the woman makes a lot of money, then it kind of, gets rid of the power struggle. But one of the interesting things is if her income is throwawayable, like it's like, oh, we can do without her income, then it doesn't matter. So it's whoever has the most money is really bringing in the most money towards the family nut or the family bills. Okay, so that's power. Okay, then that last little section right here is division of labor. And so division of labor is who does the chores. Now, old school, women were saddled with a lot of different, household chores. But when you look at it, Arlie Hochschild says that women still work a second shift. They work all day at work and then they come home, have to feed kids, wash the dishes, do that. And are the guys really involved? And this is why they say that sometimes it's the gender nature of household work. You look at the stuff that guys traditionally do, well, taking out the trash doesn't take that long. Yard work does, but you don't do it often, and you really don't do repairs that often. But you do this shit every fucking day. You know what I mean? And so that stuff, if I put in childcare on there, it's like it even adds another shift. And so I do kind of buy into this second shift idea. Now, when we talk about marriages, there's a couple of different styles. This really relates to all kind of relationships. One is healthy and one is unhealthy. This is unhealthy, exchange relationships. They're based on economics, and I'm going to get into that. Communal, community, I don't want to get into communism, but we share everything. What's yours is mine and vice versa. So when they look at it in the literature, they look at it in terms of economics. ROI, if you're into, economics, is benefits to cost. Now, what is your return on your investment? That's what ROI means. So I put this much in, how much money am I going to get back out? I put this much into the relationship, how much do I get back out? The economics of relationships. Now, exchange relationships are 100% based on this formula. They're always keeping scores. Like last week, he spent $57. I've got to go spend $57. So it becomes real resentful because you get into fights a lot because you're always trying to make sure that you're equal. You're just looking out for yourself. You're not looking out for the other person, and you won't self-sacrifice. So a communal relationship doesn't pay attention all the time to this benefits to cost ratio. The exchange relationship is completely based on this thing right down here. If I show a communal relationship, you give each other what you need. You don't sit there and say, well, last month you spent that $237, it's my turn. No, you don't do it that way. If you don't even need anything this month, why would you go spend the money? And so this is the more mature type of relationship that they mention. Now this leads into, okay, I forgot I had this on here. There's no benefits to cost analysis usually in these type of relationships. There's a little bit, but not as much. Now this leads into divorce and separation. I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy, but I've been through 2 divorces and it sucked. It just tears your fucking life apart and you have to rebuild it for years and years and years. But anyway, the most common conflicts or fights they found in, divorced couples occur over 4 things. I'm not going to ask you this on the test, but here they are. Money and sex are number 1 and 2. I would argue power and division of labor has a lot to do with money, and that sex is kind of the barometer of your relationship. If there's no sex going on, there's a problem with 1, 3, or 4. You know what I mean? I just know because I've been into a lot of relationships where it didn't work out good. Now, like I said, I'm not going to ask you that on the test. Reisman, what she did is she asked divorced couples, why did you get divorced? And she found 3 common complaints. And there were three things that were missing in the marriage. One is intimacy. Two is primacy. I'll get to that one. And three is sexuality, not enough sex or sex problems. That one's easy. Okay, so on the next slide, I have intimacy. Well, this goes back to dudes. 2/3 of divorced women said, yeah, I didn't get enough intimacy. He didn't listen to me. And many of divorced men said, yeah, I didn't get enough intimacy, sex and affection. And so that's a disconnect that, we've talked about before. Okay, the second one. The second complaint they had, to me, I think this is big, is primacy. Am I number one? It's like men said, oh, well, I used to be number one, but now it's like friends and family and children, they're ahead of me and I'm way down the list. I'm sorry, if you're a man and you get married and you start having kids, you are going to be down the list. It's just the way it goes. But women said, yeah, I'm not number one either. He goes to work and hangs out with his golf buddies and this, that, and the other, and so I'm not number one on his list either. And so that tore the relationship apart. And then the last one, you don't even really have to write anything down. If you have cheating or like men always say, I don't get enough sex, but that's why I argue that men are more sexual. But both men and women see affairs as a problem. It's like number three is easy to understand. Okay, so I think I have this on here. I hope I don't start crying, but letting go. I've had to let go of so many people in my life. It sucks. This is Elizabeth Gilbert talking about a true soulmate. She says it's probably the most important person you'll ever meet because they'll tear down your walls and smack you away. But will you live with them forever? No. They're supposed to shake you up and tear your ego apart and rattle your cage a little bit and then leave. Because that's what growth is all about. You see, I believe in sacred contracts, just like we had a contract and you were my student, but I didn't get to see you this semester. And sometimes contracts, they just last one semester, like 8 weeks. And some other contracts last a lifetime. But it doesn't really matter how long it lasts. When it's time to fly, it's just time to fly. So I want to show this little thing from the Shawshank Redemption, and then I'll come back to say goodbye, but thank you for being in my class, and I'll be right back.
And he got it.
Sometimes it makes me sad, though, Andy being gone. I have to remind myself that some birds aren't meant to be caged. Their feathers are just too bright. And when they fly away, the part of you that knows it was a sin to lock them up does rejoice. But still, the place you live in is that much more drab and empty that they're gone. I guess I just miss my friend.
I love the Shawshank Redemption. This is the last thing I want to show you. Sorry I'm so emotional. It says, letting go of what you love is difficult, but holding on to something that isn't meant for you is impossible. If it's meant for you and it has your name on it, this is what Joel Osteen says. Nobody else can have it. And so for those people that you have to let go, just thank them for the lesson and let them go on their way. It's going to be okay. Thanks for being in my class. I hope you enjoyed it this semester. I'll see you next time.